Thank you, Jill, for that introduction. As Jill said, I am Dontae Freeman. I am the Digital Communications Manager here at DBSA, and I've had the privilege of working with the chapters team and the chapters, some of our chapter members to set up specialized support groups. So I helped set up the Black support group and the dual diagnosis support group. And I've also worked with our programs team, or I'm sorry, our advocacy team and our programs team to help with the transition of our senior strength support group as well. I am glad that I am joined by our panelist here that is made up of our chapter volunteers, Eric Scharf, who you heard talking earlier, Elisa Stepanian, and Yi Lin. And I'm gonna let them introduce themselves and what chapter they're from. I'll start with you, Eric.
Hi, again, Eric Scharf. I am from Washington, D.C. I'm a member of the DBSA National Capital Area Chapter, where I serve as a facilitator and is also the D.C. Advocacy Chair.
Elisa.
Hi, I'm Elisa Stepanian. I am the Vice President of the DBSA Boston chapter. I also serve there as a facilitator.
And
yeah, so my name is Yi. I am from Orange County, California, and I'm currently a facilitator and also the Vice President of the group.
So today we're going to go through some of the challenges and what each of these panelists did to set up their specialized support groups. As Jill mentioned earlier, at any time you can ask a question in the chat, and then if we have time, we're going to get to those questions at the end and have them answer. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here is how each of our panelists actually set up their support group. And what was the community need they were trying to address. So Elisa, I'll start with you since you're in kind of a special situation, right?
Thank you, Dontae. Yes, it is sort of a different situation. The DBSA national people kindly reached out to us in recent months to inquire if Boston was in a position to be able to take on their senior strength support group and have it housed in Boston. We were very pleased to be asked, and fortunately, it worked out very well and quite seamlessly for that to happen and transition very well. And that is the senior strength group.
Thank you, Elisa. Eric, what about you? How did your group get started? What did you
Sure. First, I'm going to say, Elisa, thank you. As a senior, I'm glad to know that this exists, and I'm sure someday I will be joining one of those groups as well. I have to also say, I can't take credit for starting the group in Washington. I was part of it, but that was really one of our other members, Stephanie, who took the initiative. She unfortunately couldn't be with us today due to work issues, so stepping in for her. We actually just started our group relatively recently, only in the last couple of months. It's been something we've been talking about and thinking about for a while. And frankly, it was the ability to do the meeting virtually that was the trigger point. I think it was partly, though, because the DBSA chapter in DC has always been very LGBT friendly. I, as a gay man, have been coming for years. I've never felt any particular stigma or challenge, and welcome among folks. And we've had above average participation among gay and lesbian, transgender folks, bisexual folks within our particular chapter. But like I say, again, because of the advent of the virtual meetings, I just made it easier to start up this particular meeting, which takes place currently on Tuesday nights, twice a month. And alternates, interesting, with a women's group that was started about the same time.
And what about you, Yi?
Yeah, our group also was a lot easier to start because of COVID. It was really hard with the few members that we had to have to meet at a physical place. But basically, I'm from Taiwan, so I speak Chinese. And when I started volunteering, our president is really interested in diversity in our chapter. So he wanted to start a group in Chinese, in Vietnamese, in for Spanish, for Blacks. So so he approached me first because I am more active in the group. So we started getting a list of parents and people who have the illness who want to join the Chinese group. And we kind of had a false start in 2019. So we held a few meetings, but then that group actually became an open group. But like I said, during COVID, we thought it'd be a great time to start this Chinese group again. And at that time, we had a good list of parents who are interested in having a group like this. So we've been running a group for actually a little bit more than a year, and we have a meeting once a month on the Tuesday night. Yeah.
Thank you. Yi. So you see that there's a variety of ways that these groups can get started, from DBSA coming to you and asking you to take on a group, to working with your chapter president or someone in your chapter, to just seeing the growing need in your group and needing to have a specialized portion of it. There's different ways that your group can start, and Jill and Carla will absolutely help you to start that group. One thing that we're doing here at headquarters is we're starting to branch out to work with other groups, and we noticed that some of the chapters are also working with other groups. So I wanted to know from the panelists, when getting started, did you have any support from any outside groups outside of DBSA, or any interest from any other groups outside of DBSA? And I'll start with you, Yi.
Yeah, so we tried to work with some local organizations. So for example, there's a Christian-based organization called the Orange County Herald, and they actually had a Chinese mental health awareness day. So that was a pretty successful event. I met with the director who was pushing for mental health awareness in the Chinese community. And then there was another NAMI group in Northern California. But it was really, they came to our group, they really liked what we did. But there was not a lot of follow-up. So maybe I'll talk about that more in the challenges part. So yeah, not a lot of collaboration. We mostly so far have been relying on our own to grow this group.
What about you, Elisa? After DBSA said, hey, Boston, can you help us? Did you have any interest from outside groups or help from outside groups?
Actually, that really hasn't been as applicable for us, given the manner in which we have adopted this group. So I'm not really sure that question is quite as applicable for us as it is for the other two panelists. All that being said, I would assume and hope that, these efforts were probably made at the national level prior to coming to Boston. So any of those efforts are very much appreciated.
And Eric, have you had any interest? I know your group is
Sure. I'm actually just going to comment on Elisa's issue with the seniors community. DBSA on the national level is active in the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness. And we work with a number of the senior organizations, and I know they have a particular interest in this. So I look forward to working with you all and trying to make some of those connections.
That would be terrific. We would really appreciate that. Thank you.
In DC, I'm very active in the local LGBT community, and particularly the health community. I'm engaged with a lot of our local public health system folks. So Whitman Walker Health is our local LGBT center, health center. There's also a DC center for the LGBT community. So we have begun to reach out to those organizations and talk to them, let them know that we have these support meetings in place. I've had conversations in the past with my providers at Whitman Walker about DBSA, so they're familiar with DBSA and know what it's about, and so we look forward to connecting with them. We've also had some outreach to our local LGBT community newspaper, the Washington Blade, and hoping to get some coverage from them as we move forward. Recognizing that these are issues that more deeply affect LGBT folks, given that they are twice as likely to have mental health disorders than look straight community. I think there's a lot of awareness in the community about the importance of peer support and the necessity for that. I will know Whitman Walker already has peer support folks in place within their program. So it's an idea that they're already familiar with.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. And yeah, as we continue to fight stigma in the realm of mental health, the need for having outside groups grows more and more important, especially ones that don't deal directly with mental health, but may come from the community that you have started your specialized group in. Now we're going to get to the part that everybody probably wants to talk about, and it'll take us a little time to talk about this, but the challenges of setting up these groups, right? So we all been to support groups, we all been to chapters, and there's a set of inherent challenges of attracting more people to your support group, or maybe getting some resources that you need. And he already started talking about some of the challenges that he had setting up his specialized support group. So yeah, I'll start with you. What challenges have you faced in this, and what have you learned along the way?
Yeah, I think growing the group has been a challenge. I mean, I talked to a parent who is from China, and she told me really straight up. She said that you gotta know something about Chinese parents is that we're kind of selfish, you know. So what she's referring to is that there's this tendency for Chinese families to keep their affairs within the family. And there's this tendency for them to not want to go in the community and help other communities. And I know that, you know, like being in the US, I'm surprised by, you know, how much people are willing to give back to the community and volunteers. But that's not something that is very embedded in the Chinese culture. And so that's why it's kind of hard to get people to participate and to give back and to grow the group. And also there's definitely a stigma in the Chinese community with regard to mental health. I mean, I've called the like religious, like Christian groups, and I told them, you know, if you guys have anybody who have issues like this, please refer them to me. And actually one pastor just said, we don't have that problem, you know. And I was kind of, you know, taken aback by the kind of the lack of awareness and sometimes denial, you know, about these issues. And also because of the stigma, I know, you know, what we're really trying to help out the parents, but a lot of parents, they don't want people to know about these issues, you know. And a lot of the parents, they're not very good in English. So they are not very comfortable stepping out into the community, you know, going into NAMI or DBSA and participating in groups. So that is why I think you know, a group in the Chinese language is very important. It makes, I mean, most of our members are parents, you know, and they really are more comfortable being in our group. Actually, if the group is not in Chinese, they probably wouldn't come at all, you know. So, and it's really more than just communication. It's also a sense of belonging, you know. There's, I don't know, it's kind of like if you're from Chicago and then you're with people from Chicago, immediately there is some connection there. And that is very true with, you know, with Taiwanese and Chinese, and we both speak the same language. So I think stigma is definitely one of the issues. There are, you know, there are other challenges that we face. For example, because we don't have enough people, we mix the family members with the patients. And that's really tricky. It's really tricky to run a group like that. So yeah, so there are definitely a lot of challenges, and I just listed a few, but there are more than that for sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think one thing that's important that you pointed out is creating that sense of community, though, even amongst those challenges that you are speaking in that language, and you're talking to the family members that are willing to speak. So when we're talking about those challenges and what you learn. Elisa, what about you? You're again in this special predicament, so to speak, about your group. What challenges for you?
Well, I'm not sure if I can answer that in the traditional way that you're looking at it, but I think that one of the things that has been a little bit of a challenge, but is starting to go well, is outreach within DBSA Boston to let people know, and within our community to let people know that Senior Strength exists in our chapter. So for example, putting it on our website, making sure it goes in our newsletter, group attendees sharing it with each other. You know, this particular group meets twice a week. The times that they were meeting were good for them, but they conflicted with some of the, or half of the group time of some existing groups. And we came to find out immediately that, understandably, some of the participants at Senior Strength really wanted to avail themselves of the groups they couldn't go to. So we adjusted the time just by 1 hour with both groups, and it made a world of difference. So we're hoping that will also help people who are currently Boston attendees as well that want to partake of Senior Strength. So yeah, I would say that's, you know, those are somewhat kinds of challenges, but we've been managing them pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that you got the buy-in from all of the Boston chapter in order to tackle one of the challenges that you're having, and also listening to the members who are coming and saying, okay, if we just adjust this by an hour, we can fix that. Eric, what about you? What challenges have you faced?
Yeah, similar in the sense of the marketing issue, just getting the word out. As I mentioned, I've begun to do some direct outreach to some of the providers in the community, but like just letting folks know, even within the chapter. I mean, partly that scheduling is always a challenge, finding the right time to do it that works for a lot of people. I would say also a resource issue in terms of facilitators. Like many groups, we never have enough facilitators available and to do these things. Now, you know, so far as a relatively new group, we've got I think enough people there to do it. But as it grows and people get, frankly, people just things happen in their lives. It's just difficult. With another group I'm involved with, we had a regular facilitator, but she took a new job and she was no longer available for our daytime meeting. And then I know the person Stephanie's been doing this meeting has taken a new job, and she's a little less available all the time to do these things. So that pipeline of facilitators in the mix is always a challenge. You know, in terms of the issues of stigma, I think that's less of an issue, but certainly within the LGBT community, like I said, we have a high number of people who experience mood disorders, and their access to these kinds of things is always very challenging. I would note also that we are aware that there's about 6 or 7 LGBT specific groups around the country, Portland, Oregon, Chicago, I believe there's one in LA, Baltimore, I understand, has one. But you know, we really would like to work with other chapters to help foster these types of efforts around the country. The interesting thing is, because we're remote also, is, and this is actually another issue, and I don't know if it's a challenge or not, is we have people that are not DC that are joining our meetings. We have actually a woman from El Salvador that's been dialing in. She moved to El Salvador just recently, but you know, that's I think both a challenge in the sense that community is a little different because people don't necessarily know. If you're talking about resources in DC, for instance, that they can't really access them, but it's nice to have them as part of that community. And I think that's going to be something as we move forward in this virtual world that's going to be happening more and more.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go ahead, Lisa.
No, I just wanted to respond like Eric did to me with a couple of things that he mentioned. First of all, in terms of facilitators, Boston, like numerous chapters, is always at a bit of a challenge when it comes to having as many as we need and people not getting burned out and all of that. We try to do the best we can, but it is a challenge. That being said, we're very glad, both for the group itself as well as for Boston, that the Senior Strength facilitators came with the group to Boston. You know, we're looking at incorporating some Boston people who are seniors to facilitate that group, but it's wonderful that they came with them. And also just responding to what you said about the LGBTQ groups, Boston recently just started a support group. One of our one of our group attendees and board members recently got that off the ground for an LGBTQIA support group, which so far is getting really good reviews. So feel free to add us to your list.
That's great.
Dontae, it's Jill. I'm going to interrupt
ahead.
you guys. Stephen Cotter raised a question.
Yes.
He said, I run a smaller support group in Kansas. Are there any lessons you all have learned from running more specialized groups that could help a small group?
One thing I would say is, I don't know if you're using breakout feature in your rooms. When we used to meet in person, and our Thursday night group gets about 25 to 30 oftentimes, we would break into smaller groups and sometimes do a specialized group. In fact, the women's effort that we have in DC is an outgrowth of that. So, I mean, that's one thing to consider is you could have on one particular night a breakout group for whether it's LGBT or seniors or some other group. That would be one approach to that.
Go ahead, Yi.
Yeah, I understand the question as you're running a smaller group and it's kind of difficult to run small groups. So one thing when a group is small is we are kind of trained to ask open questions. So, after the sharing portions are done, a lot of time what I do is if I see the group is small, when I do the checking, I also ask, is there any topic that you have in mind? So after the group is done sharing and giving feedback, then we move into the topic discussion.
I think also for smaller groups, just making folks feel comfortable and welcome. So I think particularly with the LGBT issues, I mean, in our sharing guidelines, we certainly talk about acceptance and awareness and all that, but making sure that either if something is said that's not appropriate to obviously respond to that, but also saying affirming kinds of things is helpful. And at all different types of groups. I mean, certainly if seniors are present in the room, you want to make sure that they feel comfortable. And even to the point of making sure that their special needs are accommodated in terms of if they have mobility issues or vision issues, that sort of thing. I think that's important to take into consideration. And obviously language. I mean, of course, it's hard if you have people with different languages in the room, but I've been in situations where someone with, for instance, people in the Russian community, that there's people who would sit next to them and translate during a meeting for them.
One thing that each of you touched on in your challenges that's not necessarily one of the things we prepare for, but I'm sure you can answer this, is this notion of outreach. So I would like to know what type of outreach you have done for the group. And Eric, I'll start with you since you touched on it in your challenges most recently.
Yeah, sure. Great question. Actually, Stephanie, who's also not only a marvelous facilitator, she's also an incredible web designer and graphics person and all that. And she just recently whipped together this nice little graphic thing for us that has the logo and but has a list of all the meetings that the week. And so we're just starting to actually just email that to various organizations in the area. And again, get it out to people just so that people know about it. I've long said the DBSA is the best kept secret in mental health, and we need to change that. And I know, Dontae, you in the communications department, that's our goal is to get it better known. But like I say, so we're really working hard to just get more into the community. Again, it's a challenge when we're all volunteer organization to make that happen and make those connections with providers and as I mean, I'm pleased that Yi is working with the faith community in his area. That's often an important source of folks in our community. Like I say, the local LGBT community center. I do know that several of the other LGBT groups around the country, particularly Chicago, takes place in their local community center. And again, as they start to come back open again, those are opportunities of places to have meetings and but also just to let their staff know that we exist and that what we're doing. So I think those are some potential places. Media sources are always, of course, it's interesting. People don't as much use the newspaper, for instance, to look up things, but there's Meetup. And in fact, our local DC chapter probably gets more people through Meetup these days than any other one source. So I would encourage you to get a Meetup account. Some people use Facebook. I think that's better in some ways for the one-on-one connections. I don't have the sense that people as much go to Facebook looking for things like that. You certainly want to make sure if you have a good website. I know Yi is the expert of websites. Is make sure that it's optimized. I don't know how to do that. You Dontae, you know that too. Make sure it's optimized so that it's being found when you put in mental health, LGBT mental health, Washington D.C. It's the DBSA website should pop up there.
Yeah, that Eric brings up an important point as we're kind of in this in-between transition of being on Zoom and some people going back to meeting in person. It's important that you get updated information to Jill about your meeting times, because Eric is right. You're going to leverage the SEO that our site has for people finding your group online. Most of the times the national website is going to outrank your website when you put stuff in. So keep that in mind, that you do want to leverage that SEO. That's search engine optimization for anybody who doesn't know what that is. And that just means that if you type in DBSA Boston, you may get DBSA National first before you get DBSA Boston's website. That's all that means. What outreach have you done?
Actually, I have a quick question for you. So how do you leverage that presence from the national website?
Oh, absolutely. So making sure that you keep your meeting times and meeting places up to date, making sure that the name is correct on our website. So if it's DBSA Orange County, making sure that it shows up as DBSA Orange County. These are things that Jill keeps on top of, but every once in a while, something needs to be updated. So just making sure that Jill has the most up-to-date information.
And especially if your support group is transitioning back to in-person meetings and you want to make an announcement about that.
One thing I want to note is that, we have our at the beginning of every meeting, we do a slide deck and has welcome information and that sort of thing. We have our sharing guidelines. We made a couple of minor alterations to our sharing guidelines around inclusion, but also one of the slides there lists all the meetings for the week. So that when we're in a meeting for any particular meeting during the week, they're seeing all the other ones. So that we find very helpful. I actually shared that slide deck with Jill, and I think it's going to be posted as a handout on the website. So
yes, it is available right now, Eric.
Oh, great. Okay, good. Yeah. Was there something else maybe I cut you off with? Is there something else you were going to add?
Yeah. So to answer Dontae's question, I definitely think website is actually a very big component. Surprisingly, DBSA Alliance gets a lot of ranks really high on Google. If you search depression support group, I mean, it's right up there. And so that's, I don't know how much traffic they get, but it must be significant. And so we get a lot of our traffic, like Dontae said, from that directory from national. But I think also because of the DBSA name and the backlink from DBSA, if people search for depression support group in Orange County, we're at the top, So our website gets probably like 35 to 40 hits a day, but because we're providing a free service, that is significant too, and so what we did is we have a little section that says we have Chinese support group, and we wrote that in Chinese, so it kind of catches people's eyes, and I got quite a few of my members came from that, it takes time, it's kind of like you plant the seed, but over the course of the pandemic, a couple of months, I gained a few members just from that, and so definitely the website component is great. And the other big source of new people is just from referral. So, a lot of times, once I reach a Chinese family, they know other Chinese families. So quite a few of our members also come from referrals, and in terms of other forms of marketing, like reaching out to local churches and other organizations, because of my limited time, I haven't been able to do a lot of that. Like I said, I kind of ran into a wall with the churches thing, but there's definitely more I can do with NAMI and, like the Orange County Herald and organizations like that. But that kind of stuff just takes time. And I think that's one challenge that all of the chapters have is the lack of volunteer time. But definitely in the website, I think that's a very important thing.
And then I'm gonna go to you, Elisa, but before I do, I will address Yi's question. The national website gets about 1 million unique visitors a year. So just keep that in your back pocket. Go ahead, Elisa. What type of outreach are you currently doing?
Trying to think how to answer that. So first of all, just going back to what I mentioned a little while ago around efforts that have already started, within the organization. So the website, the newsletter, our database includes over 600 people. Some of them obviously are much more active than others, both in terms of attending groups, checking their emails, and wanting to be involved. But we do continue to expand that list. And I think that because this group is so new, we really wanted to allow the opportunity for it to have a new home and sort of blossom, within itself, before looking into informing the larger community, whether it's in Massachusetts or beyond, being on Zoom, that this group exists. So we're sort of in the what do I want to say here? The incubation period of that group. But it would be nice. And I think that I actually run the committee that handles group matters. And certainly something that I've already thought about as part of putting together this part of the panel to suggest that to the committee, that we might want to start looking into reaching out to senior centers and, religious organizations and so forth and so on to, do a better job of reaching more people.
And
There's another question, folks. Sorry to interrupt. Have any of the panelists considered a hybrid group format, that is, a group meeting in person with the option to video call in to ensure access regardless of geological location? What are the pros and cons?
I can answer that in DC with regard to our larger set of issues. We have decided not to go that approach because there's just technological issues of trying to have some people in the room and some people not in the room. For our large group meeting, we're actually going to be simultaneously doing a meeting in person and then a video Zoom call type meeting at the same time. The LGBT meeting group has made the decision that for the time being, they're going to remain as strictly a Zoom type call. Partly, again, I think it was Yi mentioned, I mean, people coming from such large geographical distances at this point in just a metropolitan area that people just feel it's more, it's just easier to do that. Now, I will say, I think there's a certain amount lost from having a Zoom meeting, some of the interaction, all that. So I'm hoping over time that when we get back into sort of an in-person environment, that we can perhaps not necessarily have support meetings for the LGBT community, but we just might periodically, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, just have some sort of social gathering or something just to get folks together and spend time together and all that. So I think we're gonna have to look again at some new paradigms of how we do some of these things.
I'd like to add in from a slightly similar and different perspective on that from Boston. We are well aware of the fact that, like everybody, nobody knows what the future holds short and long term when it comes to COVID, in terms of how that relates to DBSA. So that is an ongoing reality that we're all dealing with. With that being said, one of the things we've considered short term, when the opportunity allows us to return to in-person meetings, not so much a hybrid in the way that Olivia asked about one group being both, but more that we would have some groups online and some groups in person. And we're going to start mapping out in coming months what that might look like and try it on and so forth and so on. But it's a different type of hybrid model, which we think might be of benefit and be appreciated by our constituents. So we're looking at giving that a try in terms of handling the situation.
Yeah, I agree with Alyssa. We're also starting one in-person group, but the overwhelming consensus from our members is that they want to keep the remote group. They want to continue even after COVID. So like we're definitely going to keep the remote group, but I think the benefit of the in-person group, there's a different aspect to it, and I think I've been in hybrid groups before, and it doesn't really work that well. Whoever is on a computer is kind of not really participating in a group. So I will keep the two separate.
Yeah, thank you for your insight. And
I do want to ask Elisa a question.
ahead.
Sort of related. I don't think you said before when the senior group meets. Does it meet during the day or in the evening? Because I think that makes a big difference also in terms of access. Yeah.
Which is why we have one of each.
Oh, okay.
So, and
Okay.
you'll find them on our website. They're all
Mhm.
listed. So it's Tuesday early afternoon and Thursday evening.
Oh,
Split the
okay.
difference.
Great. Yeah.
All right. So as we begin to try to wrap this up here, I want to know, what does your group need from your community in order to continue to grow and be successful? And I'll start with you, Elisa.
As we sort of alluded to today, I think that, certainly any input from DBSA National is always helpful to us and something we really appreciate very, very much. I just forgot the question. I'm sorry.
What do you need from your community to ensure that your group will be
Community.
successful?
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm assuming you mean within or beyond DBSA, or both?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
Okay. So certainly within the DBSA community, I think to continue outreach efforts, hopefully consistent and strong attendance, and people having generally positive things to say, feedback about the group. And that will automatically then lend itself to more people in and outside of DBSA becoming more aware that these groups exist, and hopefully will continue to flourish in that way.
Eric, what about you? What do you need from the community, both the LGBT community and beyond?
Yeah. Again, I think just sort of that sense of awareness that we're providing these services, that sense of it's not acceptance, because that's not the right word, but just the understanding and realizing the importance of what we're doing. I think is key to us. Yeah, those are probably the best things I can think of. And by the way, I dropped my email address in the chat box if anyone wants to follow up with me directly. Happy to do that. Seeing a couple of questions here, and happy to. Yeah. I see you did the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you go into any of the support group in Orange County, one thing you notice is overwhelmingly white, and you almost never see Asians, almost never see Blacks. Hispanic, yes, but not a lot of Mexican, So I think, like you said, the national website has 1 million unique visitors a year, so we kind of rely on national being this megaphone, and anything that national decides to undertake as an initiative, definitely will have a big impact, and then you kind of send traffic, to the individual chapters. So I know National already has a lot of initiatives, like peer specialists, and so I would like to see diversity. And for me, like, I think diversity be on one of those initiatives in the future. I mean, just imagine if on the website there's a section on diversity, and it lists all the local chapter running, language specific groups. That can make a huge difference. Yeah.
Yes, and DBSA is undertaking a diversity initiative right now.
Okay.
That all hands are on deck, and that is one of the things that we are talking about and we're thinking about. But it's great to also hear that our chapter leaders and our chapter members are also focused on that as well. Any final thoughts from our panelists?
I did see a couple of questions in the chat box. One was from Steve, and he asked whether participants have indicated they would only be comfortable joining a specialized group as opposed to a general one. I will note that we're we're new at the LGBT group. All of the current participants have been active in the larger group. I've not heard anyone say that they really that they will only attend the LGBT group per se. I think, in fact, most of our folks, want to be part of that larger conversation as well. But they also do feel that there are times that there are certain issues or topics or things that they just feel comfortable talking to in the tribe, so they want that option to do both. I saw another question about church involvement, faith community. That's a little more complicated to answer here, I think. It's a good question. I think that one has to separate talking about faith or religion in the group versus reaching out and working with community leaders who happen to be faith leaders. We certainly have found that there are faith leaders that recognize the importance of addressing mental health issues in the community. But again, that's separate from talking about that as a faith question. That's the distinction I would make. Yeah.
I'll piggyback on what Eric just said about the specialized support groups and did people want to just join that solely. So we found with our dual diagnosis support group that what Eric said was true, that they wanted the option to have both, right? Because sometimes people feel that they can't express a certain part of themselves in the general group. If you offer them the specialized group, in this case, I'm talking about dual diagnosis, so that's substance use and a mood disorder, they feel more comfortable talking about that part of them. And we never, want them to go to a support group and not feel comfortable. But with that said, a lot of people also, I'm sorry, my dog likes to participate in meetings, I'm sorry. But we also found that they did not want to be excluded from attending normal support groups. So there is a need to, have both because you want to serve the whole person, right? Yeah.
If I could just add on to this conversation.
Lisa, I'm going to interrupt you. It's Jill. I'm sorry to do that to you, but before I let you go, I think this is a good way to end our session, but it is the 5-minute warning. So please continue, because I think we should stick with this question to leave it out. So please continue.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I think that in terms of senior strength, obviously, we have not received feedback indicating preferences about groups, but we would assume and hope that there are benefits, for people to attend both a specialized group and a general one. And that senior strength, has its own nuances and its own uniqueness, and similar as LGBTQ and other things. For example, we just had a complete sort of revamp and getting our women's group off the ground in the past year or two. In person, we had only maybe 4 or 5 people, and now we're getting 30 people. And there are a lot of women who in that group who go to other groups, depression or bipolar or so forth and so on, but they do find a real benefit in attending a women's group. So that just speaks to this whole concept.
Yeah, and real quick, for the Asian community, there is definitely the sense that they are not comfortable going to the open group. So there are 2 communities. So like Chinese first generation parents, a lot of them, they only speak Chinese, even though they speak English. I asked them, and the very strong opinion of feedback is that they want there to be a Chinese group. They don't feel comfortable being in a room with Americans, because the values are so different. And so then if you talk about the second generation, the second generation, they all speak English, but I've heard from several people, and actually we're kind of in the process of starting a group for Asians, in general, and that speaks English, so you may ask, why is, if they can speak English, why don't they just join the open group? But I'm just saying that there are multiple people in my group who have expressed the fact that they don't feel they identify as much with the general population, and they do want to have an Asian specific group, even though we speak English. That's not the case for me, but it is the case for some other people.
Yeah, each case is going to be different. Each group is going to be different. I would like to thank our panelists today. Your insight is invaluable. Again, they have left their email, so if you have more questions for them, please email them. They'll get back to you. You can email Jill, and you can find my email on the website too. And thank you, Jill, for putting this together for us.